Hello and welcome to the garden. I'm Dan Corthell. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad you're here. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about God. Yep. Now, I know the word God can create many different reactions and trigger many different thoughts and emotions for many people. When I was a kid growing up, I think I was Catholic. I was baptized, I know that, and I would go to CCD. And we would talk about God, and the vision that I always had was this big old man with a long white beard, in a white robe, standing on a cloud, walking around doing stuff. And apparently, God was doing stuff that was helpful for people, and then he was doing stuff that was not helpful for people. And some people said that God was about love and caring and kindness, and some people said that God was about vengeance. Some people said love God. Some people said worship God. Some people says God is all around us. Some say he is our Lord. And so those are the thoughts that I was growing up with as a kid. And so I had a hard time making connections with God. The thinking of a guy standing up on a cloud, that was very hard for me. But I always believed in some kind of spiritual connection. I always thought that that was an important thing. I always thought that at the heart of us, there is a spiritual connection. Something that binds us, that unites us, that brings everything and everyone together. But the word God at the time didn't mean that for me. And part of that came from my own thought of how God was used. From the church and how God was used didn't seem like a very comforting thought for me in the way that I was understanding it at the time. My background, it didn't fill me with joy and love as a kid. And maybe that's a tough thing. Maybe as a kid, it's very difficult to understand those concepts. So the word God was always an awkward thing for me growing up. When I would hear it, I would have mixed thoughts and mixed emotions. And when people would talk about God in their lives, I would be picturing this old man with a long white beard and a robe up in heaven, kind of doing stuff. And I was like, what? Why are we talking about this guy who's not even down here around us doing anything with us? Like, why are we giving this guy credit for anything? What God are you talking about? This was in my late teens and early 20s. It was some time that I was having, just starting to think about life. I was going out into the world and exploring things and understanding more about who I am. And at the time, the thought of God was nowhere in my mind. And I could picture that for a lot of people. Depending on your life experiences growing up with family and your religious practices and your faiths and how they're intertwined into your lives, the word God means many things for many different people. But I'm going to talk about what the word God means to me. Because, well, that's my chance right now. So, I remember starting to meditate. And as you're starting to meditate, is my beginning of my practices, you're sitting quietly and you're there and you're in your own head. And you're just kind of like, what do I think about while I meditate? Kind of let these thoughts flow, these ones go and stuff. But every once in a while, I was able to get, deeper inside my mind, I guess, or at this place. And then I just thought having this fun thought. Let's talk to myself. In my head, just have a conversation. And just think of all right, if I were to talk to myself, I'll talk to myself like I would talk to anybody else. And, ask myself questions and give myself advice with as best loving kindness as I can. And so I was in my head and I was going, okay, I love you, Dan. I was thinking in my head. And then I imagine hearing this voice say back, I love you. And that felt so good. Now, the place that I picture where this voice comes from is like up here in the back of my head. And I don't know, that's the strange thing about all of this, is trying to explain our thoughts. We have these interpretations in our head and we're trying to get them out there. And we do the best we can. But sometimes my words may not connect with your words. But anyway, where I hear this voice is just back up in here. And whether I'm actually hearing something or not, it doesn't matter. I'm just using my imagination, or at least I'm controlling my thoughts and just imagining, if I were talking to God. And in my mind, God is love. God is not this figure. It's everything. It truly is everything. It's what's at the center of us, and it's what everything is made up of. But it takes using our imagination to actually feel that and believe that. And that's the trip of it all. That's the whole thing right there. When it comes down to free will and choice, is we get to choose how we want to be able to using our thoughts and our imaginations. So for me, I really enjoy the thought of God. There's a poem called Footprints in the Sand. I don't know if anybody has ever read it. Please check it out. It is a beautiful story about how God is with us and carries us even though we don't realize it. And again, it's not this creature or this being. It is the God within us. It is us that is carrying us through these moments. So for me, the thought of God as this energy of love that we all contain within us, and we get to share and receive with and from the people around us, is such a beautiful thing. So when you hear me talking about God, I'm going to be talking about or referring to the point that's within us, the center point of us, where we can draw and guide the love that's within our hearts to ourselves and to the people around us. And from that point within us, we connect with the point within each other and everything around us. And that's God. In my mind, in my opinion. If there's a different word that you'd like to use, please use that. I think chi would flow well with that. If you want to call it the Tao or the Force, that works too. If you have another name for God that you want to use that. Don't call it God. Call it whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But in my mind, that's how I like to use it. So, that's my thoughts on God. I do realize I just went on a tangent there. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I know, I'll do that from time to time, but I think it's a beautiful path to go on. You gotta wander. So let's bring it on back. So in thinking about God being love, and God being this center point within us and in our minds, that's where I like to go when I have conversations with God. Now, I've had these beautiful moments where I have had tears of joy and love fill my eyes as I have these conversations with what I'm calling God. The love, the joy, something wraps around me. And it's a weird thing because I'm like, what? What is this? I mean, am I really experiencing the thoughts and feelings that I have? I don't know. But I know from my own experiences, when I have these playful thoughts, when I use my imagination and I have conversations with God, it just changes things just a little bit. Now, since my thought of God is just something that is pure love, the conversations that I have are just that, pure love. If I have a question, I can ask it in my mind, and my God voice can answer back in the most loving, kinding thing. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of the stuff that our God voice says to us is advice that we would happily give to other people. We would be like, oh man, don't be so hard on yourself. It'll be okay. Yeah, that stings. I know it's going to work out. Oh, please, if there's anything I can do, let me help. We are great at giving that information to other people. But sometimes we have a hard time taking that information too and using it for ourselves and in our own practices. But if you've noticed, if you ever have trouble with anything and you start to have those conversations with God of like, man, I really don't like it when this person did that thing. That made me feel bad. Most likely your God voice will go, yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't like what they had to say. What was it you didn't like about it, and what will help you let go of it? And then you could be like, you're right, God. I don't need to hold on to that. Thanks. And then you hug, and then away you go. So that's how I use my conversations with God. I think they can be wonderful times. I think that they can be very intimate experiences. I think they can be very emotional, beautiful, just phenomenal things to have happen in your life. And the great thing about these conversations is it gives you a chance just to take a moment for yourself. And there's something very special about taking moments for yourself. So, that's my thoughts about God and conversations with God. If you've had any conversations with God that you'd like to share, put it down in the comments. If you have any other ways that you like to talk about God or think about it, please share as well. I'd like to hear it. Just like with anything, the more we share about our experience, the more it could help other people with their experience. And in the end, it just helps everybody have the best experience possible. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I hope you had some fun. Until next time, I love you and wish you all the best. Bye.